what I'm saying is that the intelligence agencies have penetrated into the computer systems of the state election boards. And in fact, the CIA could be running our elections.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Daniel Ashilal. Welcome to Media. Today, my guest is an old friend of mine. We've been friends for many, many years, but this is an interview I particularly wanted to talk to him about. His name is Jerome Corsi. He's the co-founder of God's Five Stones. We're going to talk about that as well. He has PhD from Harvard University Department of Government. That's back in 1972. He's also the author of more than 30 books, economy, history, politics, including 6 New York Times bestsellers and 2 at #1. Jerome, thanks so much for joining us.
Always a great pleasure to be with you, Daniel. Thank you.
In this interview, I always look forward to talking to you, but I particularly looked forward to speaking today because what I want to talk to you about today is I would like for you to educate us on what governments do, their shenanigans, and how they steal the elections. Okay? So people, for the most part, I think they're good-natured. It doesn't matter if you're in the United States, in Canada, in Venezuela, in Russia, in China, in Spain. Okay, and so we all believe, for the most part, that that our vote counts. So people go out and they fill out their ballot, be it paper or electronic. They press a button or deposit the thing, slip of paper into the hole. Okay, and they think, okay, I voted for this guy. It's democracy, human rights, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and so in the end, you tally the votes. 1 vote for this guy, 1 vote for the other guy, 6 votes for this guy, 2 for the other guy. And so, whoever gets more votes wins. And that's what really should, that's how it should be. But that's not what happens, is it?
Not at all. We're finding, and this is Andrew Paquette's work. He's really a computer genius. He got a hold of, for 2 years, the New York State Board of Election voter registration file. This is the official file. And what he found in it, genius work, he found that there are algorithms. In other words, it's coded like a cryptography scheme. This is like a professional CIA job in which someone came in, probably surreptitiously, to the New York computers, the voter data in the election board, and they coded it so that they could plant false records, people who don't exist, but yet they get legitimate New York State voter IDs. And then it's like a card marking scheme where these are like the marked cards, and they hide them back into the deck of cards and all the votes, so you can't find them unless you're the criminals who did the code. And then you've got the ability to pull those votes out whenever you want them and use them for mail-in votes. Now, since you've got a legitimate New York State voter ID, when you pull that file out and you vote it in a mail-in vote, that number is run through the computer. It's certified. So you've just certified a vote that doesn't exist. Now, this is an intelligence operation. And what I'm saying is that the intelligence agencies have penetrated into the computer systems of the state election boards. And in fact, the CIA could be running our elections.
So let me ask you something else, because again, let's take this slowly, because for the most part, for most people, what you're saying is, it's flabbergasted, and also at the same time, it's mind-boggling, because for the most part, people think, well, the Russians stole the elections, the Chinese, the Cubans, but but my question is, how do you steal an election, and what's the difference in the way elections are stolen, for example, in countries like Venezuela or France or Spain, the United States, Russia? A few years back, just to give you an idea, I think it was 2015. Okay, Putin's party. Well, they overdid it a bit. When the votes were tallied, they got 150% of the vote. I'm not kidding. They got 100. It was embarrassing. Okay, they made some flimsy excuse about somebody didn't read the number right. The 1 wasn't a 1. It was like 150. It was like 51. Anyway, but the point is, we know. Thanks to people like you, thanks to social media, that elections are stolen and that the Russians have nothing to do with this. So again, just a general question: how do you steal elections? Because in Venezuela they just stole the elections.
It's Same system, and they use it in the EU too. It's the same system. If you have control of the computer that is running the election, even surreptitiously, as an intelligence agency. I'm a political scientist. My PhD is in political science. You can profile the election, and as you watch the election, you can see which candidate is favored. And if you've got false records planted in the database, that you can vote at will. You get mail-in ballots with certifiable numbers. I mean, Daniel, I could come to you as an intelligence agent and say, okay, do you want Kamala Harris to win by 1%, 3%, or 5%? You want her to be leading early in the day, later in the day? You want it to be a comeback? You want me to
So you can make so it's like made to order, whatever you want. It's like, building a house. Do you want a blue wall? Do you want, big window? Do you want a small window? So like you could literally predict because
dial your election. I'll make it go that way. In fact, it's getting so sophisticated, the control of the intelligence agencies over voting, that they could actually run a simulation of the election. And if they don't like how it really voted, they could throw the real votes away and just vote their simulation. And you wouldn't know the difference because they control the computers. They would register their votes and it would look so precise in terms of their voting ability because they're watching it all day long. They're saying, well, Camilla's gaining, she's dropping behind. So let's pull some more of our fake votes with real numbers. Let's get some more mail-in votes and let's mail them in for Camilla and count them, even though they'll count because they're certifiable. We got a legitimate number here, a fake vote. We made the voter up, but now we've boosted Camilla's numbers. We do that all day long. So we can make the election look any way you want it to look. And you'll think you're voting, but you're really in a Truman Show. You're in a play. You're in an act. Your votes are just you think you're doing something of significance, but it's really being thrown away.
You mentioned in a recent interview, I was listening to it yesterday, that you were saying that, you use an example of children. You have so many children. And then suddenly when you vote, you find out that you have an extra 65 children. And so can you explain that analogy? Because I really liked it.
Well, see, what they do is everybody knows their children. My firstborn child was the one born first.
Right.
My thirdborn child was very good in music. Well, you know which child you're talking about. It was the one born third.
Right.
Well, the state comes to you, the State Board of Elections, and they say, well, Daniel, I'm sorry, your first child is number 1, but your second child is number 12. And your next child is number 23. And then your next child is number 34 and 45. If your fifth child is 56. Wait a minute, I don't have 56 children. So, well, in our records, there's 56 children in your file. Now, maybe and there's real children. Numbers, you think your number 1 is 1 and number 2 is 12. Well, there's 10 other kids in there. Now, there may be somebody else's.
Where do they come from?
I may have taken somebody else's and inserted them in there. And by the way, I made 3 of them up. They don't exist. Because as soon as I separate your order from a natural order and reorder things, see, this is fundamental to card marking schemes. You can't mark a deck of cards from the manufacturer because you take the cellophane off,
right,
in order. So the first thing you have to do is shuffle the cards. Now you can insert your marked cards and they won't be seen. So I have to say, I'm going to take the people who register to vote, I'm going to separate their voter ID number from the date they registered. So your kids are no longer numbered by how they were born in relationship to other kids. I just separated your kids.
But doesn't that raise red flags within the system itself?
Only if since only the state knows your voter ID number. And if you know your voter ID number, you don't know how it was derived. You think it may be in relationship to how you register. The state is throwing that data away. And so your date, your voter ID is no longer a function of when you register. It's just a function of the number scheme according to which the state gives you your number. And they separate the numbers in order to get space in which they can put new records, including false records. They've shuffled the cards. So if you say your kids are number 1 and number 2, state says, no, your kids are number 1 and number 12, and there's 11 other kids, they've just given you 10 other kids. Because
So
they've
bef-
given you 10 other kids, they've made them part of your file, and now suddenly your kids are no longer in relationship to when they were born. 'Cause
So
those
they're
other-
totally devoid of reality. So before we continue, ladies and gentlemen, we really need you to sign up to Media. You're seeing what's going on the world stage. Okay, if you want uncensored information, the information that they can't touch, YouTube or anybody else for that matter, you got to sign up to Media. Go to our page, go to our YouTube channel, go to all these other places, sign up. Some of that stuff is free because we know they won't be able to touch it. A lot of the things, like, for example, the interviews we're doing right now with Jerome Corsi, well, they don't want this stuff out there because they know who's going to win the elections. They know who they don't want to win the elections. And so when you start talking, good things about one of the candidates they do not want to win the elections, we know what the social media is going to do. So please go to Media, sign up to our channel, get the subscription and everything else so that we can be together in this and actually beat the bad guys. Jerome, let me ask you a question. The elections in Venezuela, they were just blatantly stolen a month ago, the 20th of July. And they had your QR codes and you had your, the ID and you had all kinds of sophisticated, because allegedly Venezuelan system is the most sophisticated in the world. But they still stole the elections. They done the same in France. Okay, they did the same, as you said, in the European elections. They stole the elections in Spain. They're most likely going to steal the elections in the United States. So do people behind the scenes, in the case of the United States, Donald Trump, does he understand that the people who are running the Venezuelan elections are the same people who are running the French elections, or are they not the same people? It's just the system is the same. And if the system is the same, is it an Israeli system? What do they have to do? These, again, you mentioned intelligence agencies. What are these intelligence agencies and how are they involved, especially on the programming level, with stealing the elections?